There's few pains in life that hit extremely deep in the world of sports. Having your team come up just short, watching your team get progressively worse over time, but one of the worst ones is watching one of your favorite players become more and more washed as time goes on, and no more has this been true than with Neymar Jr. Regardless of who your GOAT is in football, we all got the luxury of watching Ronaldo and Messi in their prime, battling it out and winning everything under the sun. Once both reached their peaks, they've been very slowly regressing, which takes them to where they are now at the age of 38 and 40 respectively. However, with Neymar, he was supposed to be the next guy in line, and he was so close to getting there. I could go on and on about Neymar's trophy cabinet and what he has been able to accomplish on the pitch, but I would not be alone in feeling that Neymar underperformed greatly when it comes to what we all expected him to do. And the truth is, I absolutely love Neymar. For me and my generation, we saw him come from Brazil with all the flair in the world and sat in awe as he translated his talents onto the biggest stage possible. Neymar was a representation of the beautiful game in one of its purest forms, and it didn't matter if it was at Santos, Barcelona, or early on for PSG. Neymar, for enjoyers of the beautiful game, was able to do things on the pitch that no one else at the time was even trying to do. However, as time went on, me and my generation were constantly waiting for the moment that Neymar would well and truly take the mantle from the Ronaldo and Messi era to firmly establish himself as the top guy in football. Not number 2, not number 3, not top 10, but the main guy in world football. Yet for a variety of reasons, Neymar never really got to that point, which is why relative to what we expected from him, his career unfortunately is a failure. The man who was supposed to conquer and dominate world football quickly became an afterthought by just the age of 33. But it's important we take a look at Neymar's journey to this point and see where things might have gone wrong. But real quick, boys, if you're new to the channel, enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We are dropping weekly football videos, so make sure you hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss an upload. And if you're not new to the channel, boys, welcome back. Glad to have you around for another video. But with that being said, boys, let's take a look at Neymar's career and see where it went wrong. Sometimes it feels like it was written in the stars for Neymar to become the best player in the world. And what really boosted this idea was the fact that Neymar would get his career started at Santos, the same club where Pele would essentially spend his whole career and define himself as the best in the world. Having joined the Brazilian side at just the age of 11, Neymar refined his skills in the Brazilian league and managed to build up a repertoire as not only one of the best young talents in the world, but potentially one of the best players in the world. The journey will start in the 2009 season, where 17-year-old Neymar would make his debut for the senior side. This season we would begin to see inklings of what Neymar would become, as he would impress in many of the matches that he played in. Considering his age, the way he was able to always be a step ahead and dribble past other grown men was incredible, and he even had a decent eye for goal. This decent eye for goal allowed him to get a very crucial one in the Campeonato Paulista semi-final against Palmeiras. And the scary part about this version of Neymar at Santos is that he would only go on to get progressively better and better. 2010 was really the year where he came out of his shell, and despite being 18 years old, Neymar was committed to making this league his own. Not only did he fully establish himself as a mainstay in the squad while also being in one of the most competitive leagues in South America, but he would go on to register 42 goals and 10 assists in 60 matches that calendar year. And even then, a major fact in Neymar's case for being one of the best players in the world is that you do not need to take a look at the numbers to know how good he is. Again, at just 18, Neymar was really doing whatever he wanted in this league. His dribbling ability really felt like we were watching the next Ronaldinho establish himself right before our eyes. The guy at an early age farmed aura like no other, as you had this kid with the mohawk and bright boots just slicing up everyone on the pitch. Neymar would even make his Brazil national team debut in 2010 and registered a goal against the United States in a friendly. For more on Neymar with the Brazilian national team a little bit later. Despite receiving offers from Chelsea and West Ham, Neymar would carry on at Santos, where he would only go on to further establish himself as a legend. 2011 would prove to be a crucial one for Neymar, as despite missing many games for the club, he would provide many key moments for Santos that allowed them to win some major silverware. Not only did Neymar manage to get 23 goals and 10 assists in 45 matches, but he would also get vital goals that aided them in winning the Campeonato Paulista, and more importantly, the Copa Libertadores. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially the Champions League of South America. Santos had not won the Copa Libertadores since 1963, which was when Pele was still at the club. Do you see how I'm saying that the writing was in the stars for this kid? And add to this the fact that Neymar had also scored a spectacular solo run that season that would see him win the Puskás award, and his stock had risen to the moon. Despite at this point having concrete interest from the likes of Real Madrid, Santos extended Neymar's contract and offered him a competitive wage to rival what he'd be earning in Europe. And in reward, Neymar would go on to have a monster 2012, as he would go on to register 44 goals and 17 assists in 49 games of football. At this point, if you weren't watching Neymar's skills and goals compilations before your football matches, I don't know what to tell you. Something had to have been wrong with you. Not only was Neymar putting up these incredible numbers while bringing trophies to Santos, but he was also getting more and more notoriety, as his highlights would constantly be going viral on YouTube. Just a year later, in fact, Joey Barton would call Neymar the Justin Bieber Bieber of football, because apparently he was all hype on YouTube and nothing great in real life. But alas, in 2012 he would also win the South American Player of the Year award, which he won over other prestigious figures like Ronaldinho. In 2013 though, Neymar was probably the hottest commodity in world football. The kid who at age 21 made the Brazilian league look like a farmers league was destined to make a move to a big club, and it was only a matter of time until Real Madrid or Barcelona came knocking. He would start his campaign with Santos that year, but deep down he probably knew that the knock was going to come sooner rather than later. Well, after registering 13 goals and 8 assists in 22 matches that season, Neymar's time at Santos would officially come to an end. See, Santos had received 2 offers for Neymar, which they accepted. At that point, it would be up to Neymar to decide really where he wanted to go: Barcelona with Messi or Real Madrid with Ronaldo. After much deliberation, ultimately Neymar signed for Barcelona on May 27, 2013 for what was reported to be a transfer worth 57.1 million euros. Interestingly enough, and what might not be a shock to some people, Barcelona initially kept the fee that they paid for Neymar under wraps before coming out with that 57 million figure. Months later, after investigations went on, it would actually come out that the transfer was really around 86.2 million euros, with Neymar parents receiving a sum of about 40 million euros. This ultimately led to Barcelona and Bartomeu being charged with tax fraud. These guys are always up to something weird financially, always, forever. But nonetheless, Neymar was now at Barcelona, and he was going to be part of a great attacking trio that consisted of himself, Messi, and Alexis Sanchez. His first season at the club for Neymar standards was very good, but not really great. Neymar was still able to showcase his phenomenal dribbling and technical ability, but his scoring output had slowed down a little bit, which made sense because the guy was now sharing the attacking load with 2 other world-class players. And they would only register 15 goals and 15 assists in 45 matches, but he did manage to get a hat-trick against Celtic in the Champions League and got a goal and assist against Real Madrid as some notable performances. Like I said, he was still cooking guys up, but it was just a bit of a drop in his numbers. It was the second season at the club where Neymar really began to put in a case for being the best player in the world, because this year Barcelona would bring in Luis Suarez in his prime in order to create a trio of Messi, Suarez, and Neymar, a trio which to date has been one of the best in footballing history. You had 3 profiles which greatly benefited one another, and these 3 would go on to cook everyone in their path, but Neymar specifically had reached another level. He dominated against both Madrid sides, PSG, Bayern Munich, Juventus. Of course, you could say this about any of the 3 guys in this trio, but what Neymar was doing to any wide back that would come up against him felt like it should have been illegal. From a number standpoint, Neymar would put up 39 goals and 10 assists in 51 games, as Barcelona would go on to win a treble. But from just watching the guy, it felt like the spirit of Pele and Ronaldinho had just taken over him, and it would just be a matter of time before he was the best player in the world. Unfortunately for Neymar, like many other great players throughout the 2010s, he was always considered 3rd best behind Messi and Ronaldo, but all he had to do was wait it out a few seasons and Neymar could go on to dominate world football. And after this season, what backed up this sentiment even more was the fact that he would go on to have an even better campaign. In the 15-16 season, Neymar would drop 31 goals and 25 assists in 49 games of football, and even though it's less goals, the guy had 56 goal contributions in 49 games by himself. Do you know how crazy that is? Neymar once again had to pass himself and was showcasing on a weekly basis why Barcelona had paid so much money for him. It felt like every match Neymar played was going to be another one where teams could simply do nothing to stop him. Despite falling short in the Champions League this year, Neymar along with Messi and Suarez would be instrumental in securing another La Liga and Copa del Rey for Barcelona. But guess what? No matter how many times Neymar would go on to humiliate his opponents and show that Brazilian flair, he would still always be considered 3rd best in the world behind Messi and Ronaldo. And with Neymar and Messi specifically sharing the pitch, Messi's actions and contributions always felt like they held more weight to the public eye. And although Neymar never really came out and said anything about this specifically, Shirley would slowly eat away at him. Sure, all he had to do was wait, but if he was performing to the levels that he had been doing so to this point, why was he not considered the main man? And this sentiment somewhat came to a head in the 16-17 season, which would also be Neymar's 2nd worst on paper with Barcelona. This season, Barcelona would win La Liga, which made Neymar a part of the side that completed a domestic three-peat. However, Neymar's performances would see a little bit of a drop-off as Barcelona tactically began to become found out. A slightly aging Barcelona side became easier to play against, and thus Neymar all of a sudden didn't have as much freedom on the pitch as he had had before. Neymar would still put up 20 goals and 26 assists in 45 games, but considering the season he was coming off of, this felt like a regression. But the most notable thing this season, the thing that would go on to change the course of Neymar's career forever, was the fact that this was the year that Neymar became fed up with being 2nd fiddle at Barcelona behind Messi. You know how I said that Messi's contributions always held more weight? Well, this would prove to be incredibly true during Barcelona's historic remontada. After losing the first leg in the Champions League round of 16 against PSG 4-0, Barcelona needed a miracle in the return leg, and that's exactly what they got. This game has been covered to death, but to sum it up, Barcelona, thanks to incredible performances across the pitch and a little bit of referee help, would go on to come back and beat PSG 6-1 on the day to win 6-5 on aggregate. Neymar's fingerprints were all over this game. He found himself being the dictator for Barcelona on the day, and he would go on to secure 2 goals and 2 assists in the meantime. But when all was said and done, it was Messi who received the plaudits, Messi who was lifted in the air, Messi who was praised, and ultimately this would prove to be the final straw for Neymar. As I mentioned, he still saw out the rest of the season, but it began to feel like Neymar's time at Barcelona was quickly running out. Slowly but surely, Neymar began to figure out his escape plan from Barcelona. Neymar no longer wanted to be the sidekick, but rather was hoping to become the hero of his own story. Most importantly though, he was aiming to be at a club where he would finally be a main contender for the Ballon d'Or. In the summer of 2017, Neymar informed his Barcelona teammates at Messi's wedding no less that he was looking to leave the club. Barcelona as a club were aware of the Brazilian's choices, but they were really powerless in stopping him from doing exactly what he wanted to do. And on August 3rd, 2017, Barcelona were informed that they received a payment of 222 million euros from Neymar's lawyers, paying off his release clause and thus allowing him to leave the club. This transfer not only completely wrecked the transfer market, which is a story for a different day, but also was incredibly controversial, as it would result in a legal battle between Barcelona and PSG. It's a long story, but essentially there was a lot of crossed wires and some foul play involved here and there. At last, Neymar, who was free from Barcelona, would move to PSG, where he would take the reins of the French club in his attempt to make a push for the Ballon d'Or. In my opinion, this was the beginning of the end of Neymar's career, especially when it came to him being in the conversation for being a top footballer in the world. Ligue 1 is considered to be one of the top 5 leagues in the world, but even then it isn't really respected when it comes to other leagues. Neymar, who again at this point was one of the best players in the world, had moved to a very poor league and thus lost a ton of credibility when it came to whatever he would be able to accomplish on the pitch. Not only this, but because Ligue 1 was considered a PSG monopoly, any league title he would capture really didn't mean much, but rather Neymar would be judged solely on his ability to bring a Champions League to Paris, something that had never been done before despite how much money PSG had thrown at acquiring this one trophy. So all that to say, the pressure was on. His first season at the club was a relative success, as Neymar would go on to register 28 goals and 16 assists in 30 games while leading PSG to a league title. On the pitch, Neymar was getting disrespectful when it came to what he was doing to defenders, and if anything, was more or less a return to what we had seen at Santos. But of course, this was in large part due to the fact that he was playing worse competition. So how would he fare in the Champions League? Well, he did manage to score in almost every game in the group stage this season, but he and PSG failed to do anything against Madrid in the round of 16 and went home. I won't go too in depth on all of PSG's Champions League failures that they've had throughout the last decade or so, but if you are looking for more details, Macwell made this incredible video outlining every single step of the way where PSG have gone wrong. Check it out if you haven't already. I will also say this season began to see another major key aspect as to why Neymar's career really just took a free fall. He began to miss a lot of games due to injury. Like many before him, in the long run, these injuries would progressively get worse and worse, and sadly, it would play a major role in his downfall. It felt like before PSG, he wasn't really getting hurt to this extent, but once he touched down in Paris, his body just became glass. But now we move to the following 18-19 season. This year, PSG once again won Ligue 1 as a shock to absolutely no one as they strolled through the league. Neymar would once again, as I mentioned earlier, be affected by injuries, but managed to get 23 goals and 13 assists in 28 games. Neymar, when on the pitch, again continued to show the brilliance we had come to love him for, but because he was missing so many games, he was slowly beginning to get outshined by a young Kylian Mbappe.
Right there, that's a good pass! That's a good pass! Yes, sir!
Oh, that's a great pass, man. Damn, we should have been had this kind of quarterback, huh?
I mean, yeah, he's doing good for a backup quarterback.
Backup? Yeah. He's 21, right?
Yeah, he's 21. I'm 26 though.
PSG would once again fail in the Champions League, as Neymar would miss both legs of the round of 16, where Manchester United completed a comeback and sent PSG packing home. The 1920 season is gonna sound like Groundhog Day, because guess what? Neymar once again missed games due to injury, managed a solid statistical season, aided PSG to a League 1 title, and was still skillful on the pitch. The biggest difference this time around was that PSG, Neymar, and Mbappe, they actually found themselves in the Champions League final. So after years of disappointment, the club, Neymar, they finally had a chance to capture the trophy that was so vital for them. All the money they had spent, Neymar wanted to be the man of his own team. This was his moment. And while Neymar individually had a good game in the final, PSG as a whole came up short, and that would be the closest that they would come to winning it at all. And from there, it just was even more of a free fall, because the next 3 seasons consisted of Neymar winning 2 out of 3 Ligue 1 titles, which was embarrassing, 3 more early exits from the Champions League, a failed super team between himself, Messi, and Mbappe, being overshadowed shadowed by Mbappe and missing about 58 games due to injury. By this point, Neymar was long gone from being in the conversation of being the best player in the world. He had moved to PSG to become his own man and lead his own team, only to get the keys of the team taken from him by Kylian Mbappe. He had spent the last 7 years of his career essentially chasing a trophy that he was never really able going to win, all in a ploy to become the best player in the world that ended up failing incredibly hard. Did injuries prevent him from ever taking that next level stride? Probably, yes. Injuries play a big part in affecting players, especially players like Neymar who are skillful, they have that quick burst of pace. Most injuries just really slowly draw away and kill the body. His time at PSG just felt like such a failure when all was said and done. And ultimately, by the end of his time with PSG, it felt like Neymar had really just reached his wit's end with European football. Real quick, before I just touch on his time in Saudi Arabia, I do just want to quickly glance over his time with the Brazilian national team. Like I mentioned, he made his debut at the age of 18, where he did manage to score a goal, and from there he would go on to score countless others. In fact, he would go on to become Brazil's all-time leading goal scorer, surpassing Pele, Ronaldo, and Romario. So you would assume with all these goals being scored, Neymar's ability on the pitch, what he was doing for Barcelona, surely he would have brought glory back to the Brazilian national team and brought them at least a handful of major trophies. Well, you'd be wrong. Unfortunately, while Neymar's club career feels like a relative failure, his time with the national team feels like a straight out failure. Of course, the success of a national team, just like club teams, doesn't come down to just one player, but the difference is that in Brazil, Neymar was the main man. This was his team to lead, and they failed on countless occasions, to the point where really the best things he has to put on the table for Brazil is a Confederations Cup in 2013 and being the Copa America runners-up in 2021. Outside of that, they failed drastically at the 2014 World Cup on Brazilian soil, where granted Neymar did go down with an injury which probably greatly affected the squad, but nonetheless they failed there. They failed to win countless Copa Americas that happened towards the late 2010s. They failed in the 2018 World Cup. They failed in the 2022 World Cup. They failed in more Copa Americas in the 2020s. Overall, Neymar's time with the Brazilian national team as a whole has been a failure. Despite the few moments of joy that he would provide them here and there, despite all the goals that he would score, Brazil finally had the guy to lead them to glory after all the great teams of the 90s and the 2000s, but Neymar unfortunately failed. But to get back to his club career, after PSG, Neymar would make the fashionable move of going to Saudi Arabia. So on August 15, 2023, Neymar would sign for Al Hilal for 90 million euros, which at that point is actually the most expensive transfer in the Saudi League, more than Ronaldo. But this move would go on to be a failure, and can you guess why? It's because Neymar has missed more games with injuries than he has played. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic, Neymar has played 7 games for the club, but has missed 70 games due to injury. This was the worst move ever. The fact that this guy Neymar, after so much hype and such a drastic drop off during his time with PSG, had moved to the Saudi League of all places and essentially flopped so hard, it's terrible. Like I said, at the age of 33, this is probably the end of Neymar. At this point, he's gone back to his boyhood club of Santos to try and rekindle some of the magic, but I highly doubt we'll ever see Neymar really going up again at high levels, super competitive environment. His time in the major leagues of world football is probably over. He'll probably still play the next World Cup because he's young enough to be in that Brazilian team and put in a good shift here or there, but Neymar, as we knew him, has been long gone. Since he went to PSG, it's just been a slow and gradual decline, which has been very sad to see. Neymar, who was once the most renowned player in the world, third only behind the peak Ronaldo and Messi, a guy who brought joy to the football pitch, produced magic every single week, always played with joy. Yes, he dove here and there. Yes, he had his problems with partying off the pitch, and nowadays he's a degenerate gambler, but Neymar in his prime felt like we really were watching the second coming of so many Brazilian greats. Pele, Ronaldinho, little hints and shades of R9 Ronaldo in there with his finishing sometimes. It was an absolute joy to see, but Neymar, like I said, since he moved to PSG, was just on a gradual decline, and seeing him miss 70 games of football over the last 2 years has just absolutely killed any trajectory his career has had. Like I said, I love Neymar. I loved watching him play in his prime. Growing up, watching him play every week in the El Clásicos and the Champions League always brought a smile to my face. But unfortunately, relative to what his career was supposed to become, he failed drastically. He could have stayed at Barcelona. Messi would have probably slowly became his sidekick as time went on, and he could have etched himself in the history of football and in Barcelona. Instead, he chose to go his own route, and he fell on his face.